Hello, everyone. Many people believe wild bears wander into human communities because forests are shrinking, natural food is harder to find, or their numbers have surged after years of protection. While those reasons play a role, there's another factor we often ignore: campers and hikers leaving behind scraps of food in the wilderness. Over time, bears have connected humans with easy meals. Now they raid crop fields, damage beehives, tear into trash cans, and even prey on livestock. In recent years, some have grown bold enough to break into homes, creating not only economic losses for farmers, but also serious safety risks for families living nearby. To confront this growing issue, the U.S. government authorized controlled hunts, giving hunters the responsibility of reducing the damage caused by wild bears. To improve our odds, we laid out bait, grain, honey, and fresh salmon. The rich scent, especially the fish warmed by the afternoon sun, drifted through the forest and created an irresistible path for any bear nearby. I carried my .30-06 rifle as we scouted the woods, choosing a concealed spot about 60 yards out. We tucked ourselves behind a natural barricade of brush and fallen logs, rifles steady on bipods, eyes alert for the slightest movement. As the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the forest floor, the moment arrived. A massive bear stepped into view, its muscles taut, its nose twitching as it followed the trail toward us. My finger rested close to the trigger as I slowed my breathing, waiting for the right moment. Bears are powerful, unpredictable animals, which is why hunts are rarely done alone. Usually 2 to 5 hunters work together for safety. That day, our group had already pushed 3 grueling hours along the forest's edge, where patches of snow clung stubbornly to the rocks and the crisp air carried the scent of sage and granite. It was our guide, Craig, who first spotted the grizzly, its massive frame moving like a bronze shadow across the slope as it foraged for prairie dogs. We stayed hidden behind the rocks for 2 long hours, the cold wind cutting across our faces. Finally, the bear stepped into range, just 270 yards out. I squeezed the trigger. The sharp crack of the rifle echoed through the thin mountain air. The grizzly roared and reared up. I fired again, this time just behind the shoulder. The great beast collapsed, thrashing violently in its final fight for life. Even in death, the bear retained its majesty. Its muscles were thick and coiled like rope, its claws curved and shiny like sharpened steel. Not long after, I heard reports from the eastern suburbs of Wyoming about a black bear raiding hay and feedlots, an uncommon range for its kind, but this one had learned to adapt. The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates that wild bears inflict more than $5 million in damages each year. Determined to track it, I used an ATV and a drone, spending 2 full days mapping the animal's movements across the rugged terrain. On Tuesday morning, I finally caught sight of it near a windbreak along an old fence line, massive, sleek, and alone. Dropping into a crouch, I crept through the thin brush until I was just 150 yards away. The bear froze, lifted its head, and sniffed the air before rising onto its hind legs. Our eyes met. In that split second, I squeezed the trigger. The shot punched through its lung, and the animal bolted fast, unbelievably fast. Dust rose behind it, then it tumbled and lay still. But not every hunt ends with a clean victory. Just before dusk, a massive bear emerged directly beneath my perch, far too close for a safe shot from above. I held my breath, waiting, but then the wind shifted. The bear lifted its head and locked eyes with me. My chest tightened. It began circling the tree, growling low and steady. I eased down the trunk, rifle raised, fully aware I had broken the first rule of bear hunting: never let one close the distance. Then a branch snapped in the distance. The bear startled and bolted into the brush. I could only watch as it vanished. I had let it slip away. There's nothing in the hunting world that compares to tracking grizzlies along Alaska's salmon-rich rivers. On one trip near the Kenai Peninsula, I joined a licensed guide and set up camp beside a bend known for its heavy spawning runs. Hours passed before a massive grizzly thundered through the shallows, its fur matted with fish scales. I waited, steady behind my rifle, until it hauled a salmon onto the bank. One clean shot, just behind the ear, dropped the bear instantly. Do you believe this approach is an effective way to manage America's invasive bear population? Share your thoughts in the comments, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future stories from the wild. Late fall hunting comes with unforgiving challenges. Snow blankets the land, softening every sound while concealing hidden dangers. We trailed a black bear back to its den, where it stirred uneasily, restless, perhaps unsettled by passing hikers. From our vantage point above, we watched as it pushed through the snow to test the air for our scent. I had only seconds to act. The rifle cracked, and the bear staggered. A second shot struck true, and it collapsed into the mouth of its den. The moment was heavy and sobering. Bow hunting, by contrast, leaves little noise to ripple through the forest, sparing nearby animals from alarm. Yet it demands far more precision. A bow lacks the sheer power of a rifle, which is why hunters often rely on elevated stands in the trees, waiting in silence, poised for the perfect ambush. For 5 days, I tracked a mother black bear and her cub as they circled near my bait station. On Friday morning, they finally drew close, moving cautiously, but something spooked them. In an instant, they scrambled up a tree. I drew my bow and released an arrow into the mother's shoulder. She bolted, leaving behind a dark trail of blood that led me to where she lay beneath a thin, wind-bent bush. Later in Montana, I joined a coordinated hunt with 5 other hunters. We spread out along a ravine where a grizzly had been sighted more than once. 2 scouts pushed in to flush it from cover. Minutes later, a sharp crack of branches gave it away, and the bear exploded uphill in a full charge. I steadied my rifle, fired once, then again. It collapsed just short of the ridge, the ground trembling beneath its fall. Woo! Man, the heat is on. Hey everyone, most people assume bears wander into towns because forests are shrinking, food is running out, or their numbers have exploded thanks to conservation laws. While all of that is true, there's another reason many folks forget. Hikers and campers often leave scraps of food behind. Over time, bears have learned to link the smell of people with the promise of an easy meal. Now they're showing up more often in farm fields, raiding beehives, tearing through garbage cans, and even attacking livestock. In some cases, they've gone so far as to break into houses, creating a real threat to both local farmers' livelihoods and public safety. If you want to follow more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss what's coming next. In response to the growing threat, the U.S. government authorized controlled hunts to limit the destruction caused by wild bears. To improve our odds, we set out bait, grain, honey, and fresh salmon. As the afternoon heat intensified, the smell of fish carried through the forest like an open invitation, impossible for a hungry predator to ignore. Then I slung my .30-06 rifle and made my way into the woods. About 60 yards from the bait site, we built a blind behind a wall of fallen logs and brush, concealed but with a clear line of sight. Rifle steadied on bipods, we scanned the trees, every sense sharpened by silence. Then, as the light began to fade and shadows stretched long across the forest floor, a massive bear appeared, muscular, cautious, and following the trail of scent straight toward us. My finger rested close to the trigger as I steadied my breath, waiting for the perfect moment. Each step the bear took brought it deeper into the endgame, completely unaware of the hunters nearby. Because of their unpredictable and aggressive nature when threatened, bears are rarely hunted alone. Most groups range from 2 to 5 people. That day, we had trekked nearly 3 hours along the forest edge, where snow clung stubbornly to the rocks and the crisp air carried the scent of sage and granite. Our guide Craig was the first to spot movement, a grizzly gliding across a rocky slope like a bronze shadow, nose down, searching for prairie dogs. We hunkered behind boulders for 2 long hours, the wind biting at our faces, until the bear finally closed to within 270 yards. I squeezed the trigger, the rifle's crack echoing through the thin mountain air. The bear roared and reared up in rage. I fired again, driving the shot just behind its shoulder. It staggered, thrashed violently, and then collapsed, the forest falling silent around us. Even in death, the animal still carried an air of majesty. Its muscles coiled like thick rope, its claws curved and sharp as steel. Not long after, word spread through the eastern outskirts of Wyoming about a black bear raiding hay bales and feedlots. It was unusual for bears to roam that far out, but this one had clearly learned how to adapt. The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates that wild bears inflict nearly $5 million in losses on American agriculture each year. Determined to track this one down, I relied on both an ATV and a drone, spending 2 full days tracing its movements across the countryside. Finally, on a brisk Tuesday morning, I caught sight of it near a windbreak along an old fence line. The bear was massive, sleek, and alone. I crouched low, using what little brush the land offered, and worked my way to within 150 yards. The bear halted suddenly, lifted its head, and sniffed the air before rising onto its hind legs. Its eyes found me. I squeezed the trigger just as it lunged forward. The shot punched through its lung, but the bear bolted with astonishing speed, kicking up clouds of dust before crashing down and rolling to a stop. But not every hunt ends with a clean victory. One evening, just before the light disappeared, a massive bear wandered beneath my perch, far too close for a safe downward shot. I stayed perfectly still, hoping it would pass, until the wind betrayed me. The bear lifted its head, and our eyes locked. My pulse hammered as it circled the tree, growling low and deep. With no choice, I eased down slowly, rifle at the ready, fully aware I had broken the golden rule, never let a bear get within striking distance. Then a branch snapped somewhere in the brush, and the bear spooked. It spun, crashed through the timber, and was gone. This time, I had to watch it escape. Few hunts compare to tracking grizzlies along Alaska's salmon-rich rivers. On the Kenai Peninsula, I teamed up with a licensed guide and pitched camp beside a river bend famous for its spawning runs. Hours later, a massive grizzly stormed through the shallows, its fur slick with fish scales. I waited until it dragged a salmon onto the bank, then took the shot. The bullet struck cleanly behind the ear, and the bear dropped instantly. What do you think? Can hunts like this truly help manage America's wild bear population? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. Late fall hunting brings its own brutal challenges. Snow blankets the land, muffling every sound while concealing hidden dangers. We tracked a black bear to its den, not yet deep in hibernation, restless, perhaps stirred by passing hikers. From our vantage point above the slope, we watched closely. Then the bear pushed out of its snow-capped den, following the trace of our scent. I had only seconds to react. The shot cracked through the still forest, and the bear staggered before collapsing back inside the den. It was a quiet, solemn end. Bow hunting, however, demands a completely different skill set. A bow is silent compared to a rifle, sparing nearby wildlife from alarm, but it leaves no room for error. Without the luxury of fast follow-up shots, hunters must rely on patience, setting up in tree stands and waiting for the perfect ambush. I spent 5 long days tracking a mother bear and her cub. By Friday morning, they circled back to the bait box I had set. But the moment they sensed danger, both bolted and scrambled up a tree. I didn't hesitate. Drawing my bow, I loosed an arrow that buried deep into the shoulder. The bear tore off into the brush, leaving a blood trail behind. Hours later, I followed it to a sparse bush, where it finally lay still. In Montana, the hunt took on an entirely different form. I joined a crew of 5 in a coordinated effort, each of us posted at key points around a ravine where a grizzly had been spotted. Scouts pressed forward to drive it out. The forest erupted with the sound of breaking branches, and suddenly the bear thundered up the slope. I steadied, fired twice, and watched it collapse only a few feet from the ridge. Bear hunting in the United States is tightly regulated. Every licensed hunter is required to file detailed reports after a hunt, and harvest limits are strict, usually no more than 5 to 10 bears per season. Breaking those rules comes with steep consequences, with fines ranging from $10,000 to $15,000. But hunting wild bears here goes far beyond trophies or adrenaline. It's about forging a deep connection with the wilderness, one built on knowledge, discipline, risk, and above all, respect for the animal and the land.